The church was a cathedral of whispers. White roses climbed the pillars. Soft music floated from hidden speakers, and golden sunlight poured through stained glass windows like heaven had RSVP'd. But not everyone in the pews was smiling. At the front stood Corday, stiff in his custom white tuxedo, hands clenched, jaw tight. His eyes kept darting to the double doors at the back of the church, waiting for her. Or maybe, waiting for the right moment to run. In the third row, his mother, Madame Stella, sat like a queen in a coral lace dress, her fan moving faster than the choir's tempo. Her eyes met Coraday's and narrowed, reminding him of why he was really there. "Do it before she walks in," she had whispered in the car. "Don't let our name mix with that market girl's shame." Esiosa, the bride, the girl with laughter in her voice and dreams in her eyes, was, to Stella, nothing more than a charity case. A girl whose mother sold a kara and whose father no one ever talked about. Stella had fought this wedding tooth and nail, and now, on the day itself, she had won one last round. Coraday was to call it off, publicly, cleanly, before she said, "I do." He stared at the priest, who smiled politely, unaware of the storm coming. The doors creaked open, heads turned, cameras clicked, and there she was. Esiosa stepped into the church like a question the world was waiting to answer. Her dress was simple, lace flowing like river water, her veil soft as breath, but it was her eyes, steady, calm, knowing, that made the room fall silent. She wasn't smiling, not yet. She looked straight at Coraday. He blinked. She looked beautiful, and she looked like she knew something he didn't. As she walked slowly down the aisle, arm in arm with her father, an older man no one really paid attention to before today, Coraday's knees weakened. This was the girl he'd loved in secret, defended in arguments, kissed under yellow streetlights. And yet here he was, about to humiliate her in front of God and the whole world. The music faded. She arrived. Her father placed her hand into Coraday's. He didn't say a word, just looked at Coraday, long and hard. The priest was about to speak when Mr. Efetabore, Esiosa's father, stepped forward. "Please," he said, voice firm. "Before this wedding continues, I have something to say." People murmured. The priest hesitated. Stella frowned sharply. Mr. Efetabore looked around the church, eyes calm, voice rising. "There is something none of you know about my daughter, something I've kept secret until today. But if this young man is planning to walk away from her," he turned to Coraday, "he should hear this first." Coraday's throat tightened. Esiosa didn't blink. The room went still. And then Mr. Efetabore reached into his pocket, slowly. What he pulled out changed everything. Mr. Efetabore's fingers closed around a folded paper. He held it like it weighed more than gold. Then he looked up and smiled. But not the kind of smile that made you feel safe. No. This was the smile of a man who had been underestimated for far too long. He raised the paper slowly, letting the silence stretch. Then he spoke. "My name is Efetabore Imasuen," he said. "But some of you may know me by another name, Chief Efe, co-founder of Imasuen Global Holdings." A collective gasp rippled through the church. Stella's fan froze mid-air. Coraday's lips parted, but no sound came. That name, Imasuen Global, was everywhere. In shipping, in oil, in construction, a multi-billion naira conglomerate that partnered with foreign governments. Chief Efe had vanished from public life nearly 2 decades ago, after the company split during a bitter boardroom fallout. Everyone thought he had disappeared, or died. But he was standing right here, wearing plain agbada, with dust on his shoes, as the father of the girl Coraday was meant to humiliate. Mr. Efetabore continued, his voice clear, steady. "When I left the corporate world, I chose to live quietly. I built a life far from power, far from lies. I raised my daughter with values, not vanity. But make no mistake. He turned to the guests now, eyes sharp. Esiosa is my only child, my heir. Everything I have, every kobo, every company share, every piece of land, belongs to her. Dead silence. Korede felt his knees shift. The floor under him suddenly seemed softer, unstable. All this time, she never said a word. Esiosa finally spoke, her voice soft. I didn't want anyone to love me for money, she said, still facing Korede. So I never told you. I wanted you to choose me. The girl you met selling books in traffic, not the name I carry. Madame Stella stood abruptly. This is manipulation, she barked. A test? A trap? How dare you embarrass us like this? Mr. Efatabore raised a hand. I came here today prepared to walk my daughter down the aisle, or to walk her out of here with her dignity intact. But I won't allow anyone to look down on her because of where they think she comes from. He looked straight at Stella. Wealth doesn't start with loud clothes and louder mouths. It starts with legacy, and mine is standing right here. Esiosa lowered her gaze for a moment. A single tear slid down her cheek. Not of sadness, but release. Korede turned toward her, his breath shallow. The girl he was about to leave was never poor. But more than that, she'd been testing his heart. And now the world was watching him choose. The priest cleared his throat. Shall we proceed with the vows? But Korede didn't answer. He looked at his mother. He looked at Esiosa. Then he let go of her hand. A loud murmur erupted in the crowd. Esiosa didn't flinch. She simply stepped back, and Korede took a deep breath and said, I need to speak. I wasn't going to marry her today. Gasps filled the room again, just as Esiosa turned away, smiling. Korede stood there, the weight of his words heavier than the silence that followed. I wasn't going to marry her today, he repeated, his voice trembling, not from guilt, but from shame. Madame Stella's eyes widened. Korede, what are you doing? But Korede didn't look at his mother. He looked at Esiosa. She deserves to know the truth, he said. Not just about today, but about everything. He turned to the stunned guests. Politicians, pastors, CEOs, and cousins with their phones half raised, all holding their breath. I was supposed to end it before the vows, he confessed. My mother didn't want this wedding. Said she didn't raise a son to marry a street girl. I fought her at first. I told her I loved Esiosa. But the more she pushed, the more I doubted. I let her voice get louder than mine. He faced Esiosa again, eyes red now. You asked me once, if the whole world turned against me, would you still hold my hand? I promised I would. But when the world actually turned, I started letting go, little by little. Esiosa blinked slowly, her face unreadable. I didn't tell you this, but the day before our wedding, my mother offered me land, a car, and 10 million lira to disappear. I told her no. But even as I stood here, I was still unsure if I was strong enough to choose you over her. A beat of silence passed. Then Korede's voice cracked. But now, hearing the truth about your father, your identity, I realize I wasn't worthy of you in the first place. Murmurs echoed again. Esiosa tilted her head, calm, still. Korede stepped forward, voice low but honest. You think this is about money? It's not. It never was. I failed your test, not because you're rich, but because when it mattered most, I didn't fight for you. And if I were you, I wouldn't take me back. His hands fell to his sides, empty. The priest looked to Esiosa. Miss, would you like to continue with the ceremony? Everyone turned. She inhaled, deeply. Then she smiled, just barely. No, she said. A quiet gasp moved through the air, but she wasn't finished. She turned to her father. Daddy, thank you for standing up for me, for protecting me. But I don't need a wedding to prove I'm whole. Mr. Efatobora's eyes glistened with pride. She faced the crowd now. I don't need to be chosen by someone who had to be coerced to walk away from me. And then, in a moment no one expected, she walked up the aisle alone, straight-backed, tearless, glowing. As she passed Stella, she paused and said softly, "You tried to shame me out of this wedding, but I walked out on my own." Cameras clicked, guests whispered. Coredi just stood there, silent. But as Esiosa reached the church doors, someone stood in her path. A tall man in a dark suit, a man no one recognized, until he said one name that made Esiosa freeze. Esiosa stopped in her tracks. The man standing at the church doors had eyes just like hers, sharp, steady, familiar in a way that unsettled her bones. His suit was dark charcoal, tailored to perfection, but it wasn't his clothes that turned heads. It was the quiet authority he carried, like a man who didn't need to raise his voice to silence a room. "Esiosa," he said gently. "It's time we talked." Her brows furrowed. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," he replied. "But you will." "I'm Alex Edom, chairman of Grand Axis Group." The name struck like thunder. Guests shifted. Even Mr. Efatobra's eyes narrowed. Grand Axis was one of Nigeria's biggest financial empires, richer, older, more feared than Imasu and Global. And Alex Edom was a mystery even the newspapers couldn't fully uncover. He rarely appeared in public, never gave interviews. But now, he was here, for her. "Why are you here?" Esiosa asked, her voice calm but wary. He stepped forward slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "Because your father wasn't the only one keeping secrets." Mr. Efatobra stepped up then, voice firm. "What are you doing here, Alex? This isn't your moment." Alex's eyes flicked to him, cool and sharp. "It became mine the moment you chose to raise my daughter without ever telling her the truth." Gasps erupted again. Coredi stumbled back a step. Esiosa's world tilted. What did you say?" Alex nodded slowly. "You were just a baby when your mother died. Before she met Efatobra, she was mine. We were together. She left me when my political enemies threatened her life. I let her go to protect her. And when she passed, her best friend, Efatobra's late wife, raised you. When she too died, Efatobra became your guardian, but never told you the truth." Her knees weakened. Her father, no, the man she thought was her father, looked at the ground. "I gave him permission to keep you safe, to raise you away from my world. But I watched over you, Esiosa, quietly, until today." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You're telling me you're my real father?" He nodded once. "Biologically, yes, but I know that word is loaded. I didn't come to steal you away. I came to give you what's yours. I've signed papers this morning, making you the sole heir to Grand Axis Group." The room gasped louder than ever. Stella fainted. Coredi leaned on the nearest pew like he'd been punched. But Esiosa didn't react to the money, not the title, not even the crowd. She turned to Mr. Efatobra. "Is it true?" He looked up, face lined with pain. "Everything I did out of love. You were all I had left." She looked between them, two fathers, one by blood, one by sacrifice. Her world was spinning, but her voice remained steady. "I need time," she said, stepping past them. But just as she reached the door again, a man burst in, panting. "Madam Esiosa, you need to come quickly. Your mother's old shop. Someone's trying to burn it down." The bridle heels came off. Esiosa didn't wait for explanations. She lifted the hem of her gown, dashed out of the church barefoot, and jumped into the waiting car with the driver who brought the message. Coredi, Alex Edom, and Mr. Efatobra ran after her, but she was already gone. The small street in Orile, where her mother once sold fried plantains, was now filled with black smoke. Flames danced across the wooden stall that had stood for over a decade, charred plantain peels curling on the sidewalk, the faded umbrella now fully eaten by fire. People stood in clusters shouting, recording, but no one got close. When Esiosa arrived, she ran through the crowd, eyes wide, heart racing.
"Where's Mama Nkechi?"
she yelled, searching. The old neighbor who still ran a spice corner beside the shop appeared, coughing. "She's safe," she said. "Someone pulled her out." "Who did this?" Esiosa cried. Her voice cracked, not just from the smoke. Then a teenager emerged from the crowd holding up a phone. "I recorded the person, look." He pressed play. The grainy video showed a man in a hoodie dousing the stall in petrol. He didn't see the camera. He moved quickly, too quickly, but when he turned slightly, Corede's voice broke behind her. "I know that man!" Esiosa spun around. He was panting, ash on his white sleeves. Corede stepped forward. "That's Felix, my mother's driver, and sometimes her errand boy for dirty work." Esiosa's jaw clenched. "You think your mother sent someone to burn my mother's memory? Today? On my wedding day?" she asked, her voice trembling. Corede didn't respond. He didn't have to, because at that moment, Stella Adedayo stepped out of a black SUV at the end of the street, arms crossed, chin raised, sunglasses hiding nothing. People moved back. "What are you doing here?" Esiosa's voice was ice. Stella looked around like the place was beneath her. "Don't be dramatic, it was just a wooden stall. You're wealthy now, aren't you? Let it go." The air around them stilled. Esiosa stepped forward. "You tried to ruin my wedding, you tried to humiliate me, and when that didn't work, you came for my history." Stella scoffed. "Your history is shameful. I did this family a favor." "You set fire to a woman's life who was already dead," Esiosa whispered. "And to a part of me I refuse to forget." She turned to Corede. "You wanted to know if we had a future, you could have had one, but you let her turn you into someone small." Corede's face crumpled, but he said nothing. Behind them, sirens wailed. A fire truck arrived, but the flames were already dying down. Ash floated in the air like black butterflies. Esiosa wiped a tear away, turned to Alex Edom. "I'm ready now," she said. "For what?" he asked quietly. She looked past the fire, the pain, the people. To step into the name they tried to bury. But behind them, Stella was on her phone again, and this time the person on the other end said something that made her go pale. Stella's hand trembled as she lowered the phone. She had just received a message she never expected, one that made her knees buckle slightly beneath her lace wrapper. Esiosa noticed. "What is it?" But Stella didn't answer. Behind them, the firemen doused the final embers. The smell of burnt wood and betrayal still lingered. Ash clung to the hem of Esiosa's once glamorous gown, now torn and soot-stained, but her posture was unshaken. Then Coretti's phone buzzed. He looked down. His mouth parted. "It's a breaking news alert." Esiosa turned. "What?" He read aloud, "EFCC has opened an investigation into Stella Adedayo for alleged money laundering, fraudulent land deals, and bribery of public officials. Sources say leaked documents link her to multiple undeclared assets overseas." The crowd gasped. Corede looked at his mother. "Is this true?" His voice cracked. Stella didn't deny it. Instead, she turned to Alex Edom, hatred in her eyes. "You," she hissed. "You released it." Alex took a slow breath. "No, Esiosa did. She's the one who found your offshore shell accounts, hidden in your son's old laptop backups. He gave her access months ago." Corede's eyes widened. "Wait, Esiosa, when did you—" She looked him straight in the eye. "The moment I realized you weren't going to protect me, I started protecting myself." Stella's voice shook. "Do you know who I am? I built a name." "You built a throne of lies," Esiosa snapped, her voice rising. "And today, you sit on its ruins." Police sirens began to grow louder in the distance. Alex checked his watch. "I'd suggest you call your lawyer," he said coldly. For the first time that day, Stella had no words. She climbed back into her SUV in silence, the door slamming behind her like a final chapter. Esiosa turned to Corede, eyes softer now, but firm. "You're not your mother, but you chose her over me. That's something I won't forget." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "I was weak," she nodded. "And I was strong. That's why I'm walking away." Corede tried to reach for her hand, but she stepped back gracefully. "You don't chase a queen after you've watched her burn." And with that, she walked back to Alex. He looked at her with quiet awe. "You remind me of your mother," he said. "Only louder." She smiled faintly. "I'm not done yet." 2 months later. Esiosa stood before a podium in Abuja, dressed in a sharp emerald green pantsuit. Behind her, a massive banner read, "Reclaim Foundation, because no girl should be judged by her pocket." She had launched her own organization, an NGO for women from underprivileged backgrounds, who had the potential but not the privilege. The media now called her the Fireproof Bride. Some called her ruthless, others revolutionary. But Esiosa didn't care. She had found her name, her power, her purpose. She didn't just cancel the wedding, she rewrote the story. And this time, she was the author. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you. We hope to see you in our next video.